Hey everybody! Hope you all had an amazing New Year's and that you danced the night away and that you ate delicious food and that you made great memories for the upcoming year. So I want to start off with what other than New Year's resolutions, because I find that the first week of January everybody is reflecting back on the past year and what they hope to work on moving forward. Before I even start anything, I like to definitely sit down with myself, sit down in silence and kind of meditate on this past year and reflect back on things that have occurred to me, obstacles that I faced and have overcome, as well as the positive attributions that I have gained throughout the year. So what I like to do is I like to break down my resolutions in different categories. So the first category would be time frames. I find that this is such an essential thing because you never want to see your biggest goal of the year next to your smallest goal, because that could feel very overwhelming for most of us. I like to separate my time frames into short-term goals and long-term goals. That way I could work myself up towards that long-term goals and feel like it's more reasonable and manageable after I face the smaller goals, which seemed like no problem. In doing so, you get to really concentrate on the stepping stone that you need to take in order to get to the bigger goals. Because after you check off all these smaller ones, you'll feel so much more confident, so much more capable, and you'll feel as if though you could really seize these bigger goals. So I break down my different goals into several categories. So for me personally, here are some examples and references. Career, health, finances, social, and spiritual goals. Now, spiritual goals are extra special, so we'll get some a little later on just because I definitely want to focus more time on them. So for instance, for career, I find that it really helps if you try to see in your head where you want your peak to be. And by this I mean maybe you can't reach your biggest goal, let's say in half a year, in 3 months, maybe in 9 months. But if you only set yourself up to manage the smaller goals right now, you'll feel so much more comfortable in that space where that will propel you to move forward very naturally instead of forced. Now, when you have everything break down into those categories, everything will be more organized and more manageable, and you'll see not only your biggest goals, but your smallest goals and your stepping stones simultaneously, which will help give you the perspective of the bigger picture that you're working on. If you just put all your main goals, like let's say, for example, lose 50 pounds, that could seem so overwhelming that maybe instead of even writing, if you feel like that's too much to look at, instead of writing that, you might even just want to put exercise 3 times a week, portion control, and so forth, just so you feel that maybe you don't want to see the whole summary of your goal so that you don't get discouraged based off of how far it maybe seems at this point in time when you're starting off. So instead of breaking the spiritual goals down just as a short-term thing or a long-term thing, I like to also break it down based off of attributes that you like to gain. How do you like to cope this year? How do you like to face obstacles? So that this sets some perspective when it comes to achieving these goals. I find that for spiritual goals, you don't necessarily put them in time frames just because of the fact that for the other goals, they're more of a physical sense. When it comes to spiritual goals, they're very personal. So that means that you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with your mental state, you're dealing with your mindset, and all of these things take time and healing. For the spiritual goals, I definitely break it down into different categories, such as how I wish to face my obstacles this year, what kind of self-reflecting I will do this year, what are the virtues that I'm chasing, what are the personality traits or the characteristics that I'm chasing. Most of these goals entail you dealing with your emotional mindset. That's why I want you guys to take the pressure off of yourself, to take the standards off of yourself, to take the emotional expectations off of yourself, just because of the fact that you really need to hone in on dealing with these things in order to move forward. I know that we all want to cross all our goal lists out, especially towards the end of next year, but I want you to all reach that place authentically. Don't feel the pressure to just knock everything off the list just because of the fact that maybe your time frame is approaching. Extend it a little bit, understand it a little bit more, analyze why it maybe took you a little bit longer than expected. If you find that looking at your goals all at once on a piece of paper gives you an intense amount of pressure, you know what you should do? Definitely write down to-do lists instead. So you don't have to face all of the year's goals at once. You instead could just make to-do lists for the week or for the month and focus on a different virtue that you want to focus on for that month. Balance is key when it comes to all these categories. You want to make sure you take the time to really own on all the skills that you need to achieve these goals. So let's say that maybe in January, your goal would be to get your career started, which is absolutely great. So after you get those gears going and you kind of stabilize that category, then come February, you might want to toss in a new challenge, and you might want to toss in, let's say, health. So now you're going to the gym, let's say 3 times a week, and you're working on your career to simultaneously create this balance that works together. At any point in time, one category might be prioritized over the other. We're human beings, so there's no way that at every single point in time we're completely balanced and stabilized. No, there will be moments that you're going to prioritize health over, let's say, career, or you're going to prioritize your finances over your social life, and that's absolutely okay. Take the load off of yourself for perfection. You're a work in progress. That means that someday you might be a little more stagnant, or some days you might be a little bit more productive. I definitely don't want you to emphasize your productivity as a way to track your progress. Most of the time we're growing, even if we can't necessarily see it or track it. So let's say you're stagnant in some categories of your life. That's absolutely fine. What I always want you guys to gear back towards is self-love and self-care. Because those two things will always get you back to your roots, always get you recharged, and always make you feel anew when you come towards facing those new opportunities and obstacles. Allow all of your goals to evolve. You're growing, so that means that maybe what was once a goal this month, you might outgrow the next month, and that's absolutely okay. Don't feel guilty because you're outgrowing your own expectations. Go with it and run with it and see where that really takes you. Take the time to reflect what got you to this space. This year is not only about checking everything off the list. It's about setting time to love yourself enough to see what you desire, to see what you need, and to see how you could spiritually gain a new version of yourself throughout this year. Every single year is a progression. So that means that maybe you can't this year jump from 0 to 100, but maybe you could jump from 0 to 10 and that's enough. Have it in your mindset that all you want from this year is to try your best at each goal and to see yourself at a different place mentally, physically, and spiritually this time next year. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it helped you even the smallest bit to move forward this year. Please subscribe, like, and follow me on Instagram. My handle's right below. And I will see you next week for a different session.